In October 2010, a Nicaraguan military commander ordered his troops across a border. Satellite imagery shows the San Juan River delta on the border between Nicaragua and Costa Rica, where a river meets the Caribbean Sea in Central America. The troops arrived on Isla Calero, a wetland island in the delta of the San Juan River, where it meets the Caribbean Sea. They set up camp. They began dredging operations. Costa Rica protested immediately. "This is Costa Rican territory," San Jose said. "This is Nicaraguan territory," Managua responded. The Nicaraguan commander's source for the border location was Google Maps. Google Maps showed the eastern end of the border between Costa Rica and Nicaragua slightly south of the generally accepted line. This gave Nicaragua a small territorial gain at Isla Calero of a few square kilometers. The Nicaraguan commander reportedly cited this digital map as his justification for crossing into the disputed area. The news spread globally within hours. Wired magazine ran the headline "Nicaraguan Invasion." Blame Google Maps. The Atlantic ran the headline "Google Maps Nearly Starts a War." The Organization of American States urgently called on both countries to withdraw forces. Costa Rica, which has no army and is permanently neutral, petitioned the International Court of Justice. And Google's geopolicy analyst Charlie Hale published a public statement acknowledging that the company had become aware of a dispute that referenced the border between Costa Rica and Nicaragua as depicted on Google Maps. Google corrected the map. Nicaragua's foreign minister formally wrote to Google requesting it not modify the map. His government believed the wrong version was correct. A data error in a U.S. State Department dataset had been imported into Google's geographic database. A wrong line on a digital map, sourced from a government dataset, had deployed troops across an international border and triggered a multi-country diplomatic incident. And what happened at the San Juan River in 2010 is not an isolated story. It is a window into one of the most consequential and least discussed facts about how modern people understand geography. The map you see is not the map everyone sees, and the map you trust is not necessarily the map that is correct. Today, Where on Earth reveals the geography of map errors, how wrong coordinates send troops across borders, how the same territory looks different depending on where you stand, how colonial maps still ignite modern wars, and why the world's most vulnerable populations are systematically missing from the data that aid organizations depend on. Subscribe to Where on Earth and hit the bell. Now let us understand exactly what happened at the San Juan River. A comparison shows the Google Maps version of the Nicaragua-Costa Rica border in 2010, with the border slightly misplaced compared to the official treaty line. The San Juan River forms the border between Nicaragua and Costa Rica. But rivers move. The course of a river changes over decades and centuries as floods shift the channel and the delta builds and retreats. The 1858 Canas Gerais Treaty established the border along the river's course as it existed at that time. The course of the river in 2010 was not identical to the course of the river in 1858, and the way that historical river course was translated into digital geographic data introduced an error. When Google assembled its border data for Central America, it drew on a dataset supplied by the United States Department of State. That dataset placed the eastern end of the Nicaragua-Costa Rica border, the delta where the river meets the Caribbean Sea, in the wrong location. Off by enough to place a portion of Costa Rican territory on the Nicaraguan side of the line. A data quality analyst for Google who later reviewed the issue described it as a compound error, an incorrect source dataset combined with the authority that digital maps carry. People assume digital maps are precise because computers are precise, but a computer will precisely render whatever data it is given. If the data is wrong, the map is precisely wrong, and the authority of the visual, the clean, confident lines of a Google map, made a data error appear as established fact. When a military commander looked at Google Maps and saw Isla Calero in Nicaraguan territory, he did not see a potential error. He saw a definitive answer. That is the first lesson of the geography of maps. Authority and accuracy are not the same thing. Now let us go to Kashmir. A map comparison shows Kashmir appearing with solid defined borders when viewed on Google Maps from an Indian IP address versus appearing with dotted, uncertain lines when viewed from Pakistan or internationally. Kashmir is a mountain region in the Himalayas. India claims all of it. Pakistan claims most of it. China administers a section of it called Aksai Chin. The line of control, a ceasefire line established in 1972, divides Indian-administered and Pakistani-administered Kashmir on the ground. The line of actual control further east separates Indian and Chinese-administered territory. On Google Maps, when you view the region from inside India, the borders are shown as solid lines. Kashmir is presented as fully and unambiguously Indian territory with clear definitive borders. When you view the same region from Pakistan or from most of the rest of the world, the same borders appear as dotted lines. suggesting uncertainty, suggesting dispute, suggesting that this is not fully resolved territory. The same mountain valleys, the same 14 million people living there. Two entirely different geographic realities depicted on the same platform depending on where the viewer is sitting. Google's official policy acknowledges this directly. Director of Product Management for Google Maps. Ethan Russell told The Washington Post in 2020, "We remain neutral on issues of disputed regions and borders and make every effort to objectively display the dispute in our maps using a dashed gray border line. In countries where we have local versions of Google Maps, we follow local legislation when displaying names and borders. In India, local legislation requires Kashmir to be shown as Indian territory. In Pakistan, the dispute is shown. For the billion-plus users of Google Maps outside both countries, the dotted line version is what they see. This matters enormously. A person in Europe or North America or Africa who looks at Google Maps to understand the Kashmir conflict sees a dotted, uncertain border. A person in India sees a definitive solid line. Their understanding of the geographic reality, their mental model of where the border is shaped by different versions of the same map. Their perception of who controls what is shaped by where they happen to be when they open the application. Apple Maps follows the same principle. The company stated it is responsive to local laws with respect to border and place name labeling. Bing here. All major digital mapping platforms operate on similar logic. The map is not objective. It is customized for the viewer, and the viewer does not know this. Now let us go to the South China Sea. A satellite image shows the South China Sea with the dotted 10-dash line drawn by China, claiming approximately 90% of the sea visible on Chinese maps but rejected by the surrounding nations and the International Court. China claims approximately 90% of the South China Sea. Its claim is expressed cartographically as the 10-dash line, a series of dashes drawn roughly around the perimeter of its claimed area. The line was originally published by the Chinese government in 1947. It has been the subject of an international arbitration ruling in 2016. The Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled that China's claim had no legal basis under international maritime law. China rejected the ruling. It continued publishing its maps with the 10-dash line. A Chatham House analysis published in March 2026 noted something revealing about the cartographic strategy involved. The 10-dash line is deliberately ambiguous. It is drawn imprecisely. It does not have defined geographic coordinates specifying exactly what it claims. The Chatham House researcher described it directly. The South China Sea claim is deliberately vague. Both parties to a bilateral disagreement may actually feel they are better off not trying to resolve it, because attempting resolution would cause greater problems. Making the cartographic claim precise would require China to formally specify and legally commit to exactly what it claims. Keeping it vague allows China to assert sovereignty while maintaining flexibility in how that claim is interpreted in any given context. The map is a tool for maintaining strategic ambiguity, not just a technical record of geographic fact. The countries surrounding the South China Sea, Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, all publish their own maps that show different and overlapping claims to the same waters. When a Vietnamese fisherman and a Chinese Coast Guard vessel both believe the same stretch of water is their national territory based on maps their respective governments published, the geographic data conflict has immediate real-world consequences. It is happening every week in the South China Sea. Now let us go to Southeast Asia and a map drawn in 1904 that caused a war in 2025. The Preah Vihear Temple sits on a clifftop on the Dangrek Mountains on the border between Cambodia and Thailand. Aerial views of the Preah Vihear Temple show its ancient Khmer stone structures perched on a dramatic clifftop escarpment above the Cambodian plain. The temple was built by the Khmer Empire in the 11th century. In 1904, France, which had colonized Cambodia, sent surveyors to map the border between French Indochina and the Kingdom of Siam, which is now Thailand. The official treaty between France and Siam defined the watershed of the Dangrek Mountains as the border. The watershed line would in theory place the temple on the Thai side of the Yi-Ki-Kamla border, but the French surveyors drew the border line approximately 1 kilometer off the watershed, placing the temple on the Cambodian side. The map was published. Both parties received it. Thailand did not formally protest the map's error at the time. In 1962, the International Court of Justice ruled that Thailand had accepted the 1904 French map by not protesting it and awarded the Preah Vihear Temple to Cambodia. Thailand accepted the ruling on the temple itself, but disputed the 4.6 square kilometers surrounding area. A territorial dispute defined by a surveying error made in 1904 festered for over a century, and in July 2025, it exploded. The deadliest clash between Cambodia and Thailand in more than a decade erupted at the Preah Vihear border. Multiple casualties, hundreds of thousands of people displaced, a 120-year-old map error still generating military conflict in 2025. This is not unique to Southeast Asia. Across Africa, the colonial border maps drawn at the 1884 Berlin Conference by European diplomats who in many cases had never visited the territories they were dividing created over 100 new borders in less than a decade. These borders divided approximately 10 million square kilometers of African land between European powers. They split over 2,000 distinct ethnic groups between different colonial territories, placed traditional enemies inside the same administrative borders, separated traditional allies across new international frontiers, and created the geographic basis for most of the territorial conflicts that have defined African politics for the past 60 years. The Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Nigeria, the countries experiencing the most severe conflicts in Africa right now, all have borders drawn or significantly influenced by the Berlin Conference geography. Maps drawn without any knowledge of or regard for the people living in the territories they divided are still defining life and death in those territories over a century later. Now let us understand the most consequential mapping gap on Earth. A volunteer sits at a laptop mapping roads and buildings in an unmapped region of Central Africa using satellite imagery through the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team Tasking Manager. The Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, HOT, and the Missing Maps project were created specifically to address a problem that had been killing people in humanitarian crises. When a disaster strikes a poorly mapped region, the first responders have no map to work from. After the 2010 Haiti earthquake, one of the most devastating natural disasters of the century, aid organizations arriving in Port-au-Prince discovered that accurate street maps of the city barely existed. Volunteers across the world began mapping Haiti from satellite imagery within hours. They traced roads, buildings, and landmarks into OpenStreetMap, an open geographic database accessible to everyone. The maps created in the days after the earthquake saved lives by enabling aid to be routed to specific locations. That emergency response inspired the creation of HOT and the Missing Maps project as permanent organizations to map vulnerable regions before disasters strike. But a comprehensive study of OpenStreetMap's coverage published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found a devastating geographic disparity. Low and medium human development regions house approximately 46% of the world's population. They account for only 28% of the buildings and 16% of the roads mapped in OpenStreetMap. The places where people are most likely to need an accurate map in a crisis are the places least likely to have one. This mapping gap has direct life or death consequences. Aid organizations use digital maps to route food, water, medicine, and staff. When the map is blank, the aid cannot be delivered with precision. When the map shows blank space, aid planners may underestimate the size or location of a population in crisis. An unmapped community is effectively invisible to the global humanitarian response system, and the communities most likely to be unmapped are those with the fewest political connections, the least economic leverage, and the smallest digital footprint. Rural communities in the Democratic Republic of Congo, nomadic populations in the Sahel, informal settlements on the edges of South Asian megacities. All of them present in the world, absent from the data. Now let us understand why these examples connect into a single geographic reality. The Nicaragua-Costa Rica border conflict, the dual Kashmir maps, China's deliberately vague 10-dash line, the 1904 colonial map still causing casualties in 2025, the missing populations in humanitarian datasets. They all share one fundamental geographic truth. Maps are not neutral records of objective reality, they are choices. Who draws the map decides what the map shows. What data source feeds the database determines what the database knows. Whose legislation the platform follows determines what the viewer sees. Maps carry authority. People trust them because they look precise, because the lines are clean and the colors are definitive and the coordinates are specific. But precision in presentation is not the same as accuracy in content. A map can be beautifully drawn and entirely wrong. A map can be technically accurate and systematically incomplete. A map can show different realities to different viewers while appearing to each viewer as the single objective truth. The Nicaraguan commander who sent troops into Costa Rica trusted the map. The Indian citizen who sees solid lines around Kashmir trusts the map. The person outside India who sees dotted lines trusts the same map differently. The aid worker looking at blank space in a humanitarian crisis sees absence, not a population that simply was not mapped. Each of them is working from a map. Each of them believes they are working from reality. The gap between those two things, the map and the territory, is where borders are disputed, armies are deployed, populations are erased from aid plans, and colonial errors are still killing people 120 years after the wrong line was drawn. Understanding geography means understanding that the map is a representation made by humans with limitations, interests, and errors, not a perfect window onto the world. Knowing this is not cause for despair. It is the first requirement for reading any map intelligently. Subscribe to Where on Earth for weekly geography that reveals the world as it is rather than as any single map shows it. Hit the bell and drop your thoughts in the comments below, because the world looks very different when you understand the gap between the map and the territory.